So today we're going to focus on some scissor activities, and I tried to use some things that you'll have around your house. So the first one is a beginner skill activity. So I had a straw in my house. Hopefully you guys do too, because you can do a lot of things with the straw. So the first thing is when you're using your scissors, like we've talked about in school, make sure you keep your thumb up, keep your arm close to your side, and you're holding whatever you're cutting with your hand that's not holding the scissors. So for this activity, we just snip through the straw, and it's working on those basic snips. Push the scissors forward. You don't want them up, you don't want them down. You want to make sure, like I said, that you keep that thumb up and just snip right through. And it's kind of fun because they fly all over the place. So once you get your straw pieces, we can take this a little step beyond. I'm going to grab a couple and do a couple other fine motor activities that are going to focus on you being able to pinch the straw, which is a nice small item, which is going to strengthen your hand muscles that you need for writing. So one of the other things you can do with this, if you have a pipe cleaner or a shoelace or another string at home, I like to use pipe cleaners because students who have a harder time holding on and completing stringing tasks, it's a little bit more firm so it's not flimsy on them. So with the pipe cleaner, you can put your pieces on and make them into a little necklace or bracelet. Another thing that you can do, if you have any empty spice containers that have these little slots in it, or a water bottle, this is working on being able to pinch, and then the eye-hand coordination needed to see that and then put it through right there. So just a fun little activity. You can also use, if you have toothpicks or any other small items that would fit through there, you could put them through there. And if you want to take it a step further and you have colored items, you could color the little openings different colors and then have them sort and organized by different colors. So just targeting a couple other skills as well. So that's one activity. I then also put together some simple things that you could do with paper for the scissors. The first one, if your student is a beginner, I just drew a green, I know it's not beautiful, but just a little green patch right here. So we're going to focus just on snipping. And I like to use half pieces of paper. It gives your student a little bit more control while holding it. So you just promote them to use both of those hands. So hold with one hand and then just snip and turn that green patch into some grass, making some fringe right there. So that's one idea. If your kid is ready to take it a step further and work on snipping through paper, again, using thin strips so they'll be able to hold it and manipulate it a little bit easier is what I usually go for. And the first step is going to be cutting straight through that paper. So I made some lines right on there, and I add little smiley faces. I like to use nice thick lines so then they know exactly where they need to cut. And I added these smiley faces as a visual cue to know where to hold while you're cutting. So tell them you go ahead, you hold right on that smiley face, and then keep that arm in, keep that thumb up, and then you cut right on through, trying to stay on that line. Hold, pinch, cut through. So there's one idea. If they're ready to move on to the next step, it's going to be really focusing that control to push forward and stop, and that's also going to be working on the comprehension of understanding how to do that. So for this one, I like to use visual cues with greens and reds to cue going, starting, and then red to stop. So you start on the green and you snip, and when you see the red, you stop. And tying in those verbal prompts to tell them to cut, push forward, stop will help if they need that extra help. All right, if they're ready to work on some shapes, I use the highlighter to make a square and a circle. I typically start off with a square because it's easier to prompt to cut straight forward and then turn. Where with the circle, it's a little bit trickier to rotate it with your other hand while you're cutting. So I would suggest to start off with a square. So I used a highlighter, so then you can also focus on some tracing skills. And you could do this with any of these activities if you want them to first practice tracing the lines and then cutting on it. You could do that. So there's my highlighter. I'm gonna practice tracing my square with a darker color. So I'm gonna focus on staying right on those lines. It's like driving a car on the road. You don't want it to go off those lines. There you go. And then once they have that done, you can focus on cutting. I used a smaller piece of paper, so it's easier to control. I would suggest starting off with that if it's trickier for your kids to cut it out by themselves. So then they can turn it a little bit easier. That extra paper gets in the way sometimes. So don't be scared to tell them when to rotate the paper. So start cutting, cut, cut, cut. Okay, time to turn the paper. Turn, turn, turn. There you go. And then same thing for the circle. You can go ahead and trace it and then help them if they need help to turn it. And then one other activity I came up with the scissors, if you have any magazines or coupons lying around at home, you can either make just a little art project with a collage or something where they cut out different things. You could also tie in, I didn't have very many different things at home, but if you want to just start focusing on a visual perceptual activity, so that means being able to find and locate things on here with a bunch of different things going on. You're seeing if they can identify what you said and then find it with their eyes. So you could first start off with saying, ooh, on this paper, do you see any burgers on here? And you could have them go through and circle all of them. And then they could work on cutting those out. And then once you do that, you could do a bunch of different things. You could either do having them sort food items or people. So I have a couple people out there. You could work on cutting those out, putting those things there, or you could even scaffold it to something different and do like sorting things by color. So those are just a couple activities that you could do with some scissors.